Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. I am not going to do my normally really long and vacuous and verbal vomit intro that I normally do. I'm going to tell you guys the new shipment of coffee is almost here. Make sure you are ordering. I've got pretty much half of it already accounted for, getting ready to go out. Check out the merchandise. I got beanies in the works, by the way. They're coming in. I want to thank my friends that are following me and supporting me on Subscribestar for supporting me on Subscribestar. If you're not familiar with what Subscribestar is, it's a subscription support platform. So you can head over to subscribestar.com, look for Minnesota Black Robe Regiment podcast, and you can support me there if you appreciate the work. And like I keep telling everybody, I'm working on exclusive content for Subscribestar. And it's going to be interesting as we move forward. Also, thanks to my friends at Arden Sales Group. They have been great supporters of the show. They have provided a lot of support, connections, and help. And I'm really thankful for everything that they have done. I'm also thankful in particular to my friend Pirate and my friend Larry, who have helped with tech issues and equipment and whatnot. Now for the part where I'm going to have to struggle to get through the emotional aspect of this. It is November 7th of 2022. Most of you know that already. You go back 2 years, basically, and I had been warning people throughout all of 2020 after the first round of shutdowns was conducted. I had told everybody that Governor Commissar Tim Walz of the People's State of Minnesota was not done with us, and that the psychological build and pressure was coming, that we were going to be doing a second round of lockdowns, and that Jan Malcom and Keith Ellison and the rest of the people on the executive council, along with Governor Walz, were chomping at the bit to punish us, to show us who was in charge. And of course, it started by telling people that we suggest that you not do this for Halloween. We suggest that you not do things for Thanksgiving. We suggest that you not do things for Christmas. And then it became, you will not do these things. And then it was, we're shutting churches down again. And well, we'll back off of that a little bit, but we are going to shut down small businesses again. And I became aware of this group of small business entrepreneurs who were going to remain open on the day of the small business shutdown in Minnesota. And one of those was a gal named Lisa Hanson from Albert Lea, who is the owner, operator, and chief bottle washer of the Interchange Coffee and Wine Bistro in Albert Lea, Minnesota. Now, if you know anything about Albert Lea, it's called the Interchange because of the intersection, the meeting of Interstate 90 and Interstate 35. If I remember correctly, some of the history behind that. Lisa, if I'm right, you can nod off camera. I got the nod. All right, I'm doing all right so far. And I headed over there one incredibly sleety December day. Did not announce myself. I had decided I was going to go check this place out. I did not announce myself. I went in and ordered a sandwich and a hot chocolate coffee thing because, I normally drink black coffee, but I was at a fancy coffee shop, so I thought I should order something fancy. And I sat down and I watched. And unbeknownst to me, while I was watching, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety showed up to serve paperwork on Lisa, telling her she was in violation. And, if I was the intrepid reporter, independent journalist that I thought I was, I probably would have caught all of that on camera, but I was just observing. So I walked over, I introduced myself to Lisa and her wonderful other half, Vern, and had a brief conversation, said I'd really like to have you on my show sometime. And Lisa, to her credit, did the one thing that she probably should have, how do I want to say this? Things might be different for her if she had vetted me even better than she did, but she sicked her kids on me, and she goes, check this guy out. And then they came back, and I don't know, maybe they might have been having an off day with their discernment, and said, he seems legit, you should go on his show. So Lisa and I got together, and we did a interview, and we became friends. And I took a keen interest in what was going on in Lisa's life because of what was happening with her business. And I have walked a lot of walks over the last 2.5 years since I started this show, since I started this channel. I have stood on the front lines, literally, of being set up and betrayed by people who should have been watching out for patriots. I watched as Minnesota State Patrol and St. Paul Police marched Antifa and the new Black Panthers down the street to damage vehicles and assault people at a rally, at a protest. I have been in a lot of places over the last 2 years with a lot of people. I have never stood shoulder to shoulder with someone like Lisa since being out of the military. And even in my former career in the law enforcement world, I have never stood shoulder to shoulder with someone like Lisa. Ever. She is not just a business owner who got screwed. She is a friend. She is my sister. And we bled together. And our stories are inextricably linked. Because what was done to Lisa was far worse than what happened to me. But we have bled and lost because of our friendship and our partnership and being allies in this fight for liberty here in Minnesota over the last 2 years. And we are so inextricably linked that the now former city attorney of Albert Lea, Kelly Dawn Martinez, not only did she report me to the BCA and the FBI maliciously, along with the chief of police of Albert Lea, J.D. Carlson, but she also subpoenaed me last year to testify against Lisa. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but they subpoenaed me and then ordered me to not talk about the Constitution as a witness for the prosecution. For the prosecution. Martinez literally went out of her way to approach me and say, "You're my witness. You're not allowed to bring up the Constitution." In a trial. And I immediately stepped down after I was done testifying and asked for permission, and she tried to get me thrown out of the courtroom. And even Judge Joey Buetel could not find it in his heart to agree with her on that one, and I got to stay and watch the rest of that event. The other day, many of you have already seen the video. The city of Albert Lea has dropped all the charges going forward, the remaining charges. And they kind of tried to paint it in this way of, well, it was just the best financial decision for the city of Albert Lea at this time. But they were getting their butts handed to them, and it might have something to do with the fact that Lisa brought in apparently a heavy hitter. And we'll be having her attorney on with us here shortly, but I'm going to bring Lisa in now. Oh my gosh, she got Vern to sit down. Vern, for the first time in 2 years, you have made it onto my show. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, TC. It's so good to see you. We haven't seen each other in way too long.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't. When was the last? Where was the last place I ran in? I can't remember the last place I ran
Been
into
too
you.
long. Yeah.
Yeah, like the one that I can remember for sure was the Freedom Truckers rally, but I feel like there was something else between March of this year and
Maybe. That might have been it.
that might have been it. Yeah. Well, I kind of stayed away from Albert Lea for
Yeah.
a little while until I heard that KDM, everybody, Kelly, Dawn Martinez, KDM, until we heard that KDM was leaving Albert Lea as their city attorney. And while we cannot say beyond any reasonable doubt, it sounds like her departure from Albert Lea was under less than pleasant circumstances for everybody involved. And I have found out subsequent to that, doing my own research and digging and asking some questions, that she may now be working, apparently, ironically, suspiciously, nepotistically working in the county that I was formerly employed by when she decided to come after me. And if I can go ahead and get that confirmed here in the next couple of days, we'll probably be doing just a TC. Let's talk about how did she end up there situation. But your arch nemesis through all of this hasn't really been Governor Walz. I mean, obviously Governor, Commissar Walz and the Enforcement Bureau of the People's State of Minnesota under Ellison and others really have been a driving force in what happened to you with the interchange. But your arch nemesis through all of this, and we did a deep dive conversation about the stuff preceding 2020 with the structural failures of the building and how they treated that and how that impacted your business and whatnot, really has been Kelly Dawn Martinez. She was the driving force. Unlike any other jurisdiction in the state of Minnesota, we have seen people like Larvita and Lisa Monet Zarza come under assault from the state, but not to the same level that you came under assault from the state through the machinations of Kelly Dawn Martinez.
Mhm.
She had a personal vendetta, and to this day, have we ever been able to figure out what it was?
I no. I don't know, but yes, I would agree it was a personal vendetta.
Because she brought the full force of the state down on you. It wasn't. I mean, from the nail walls to the wall protests that you held at the interchange in 2021 to like just charging you. They brought in a confidential, reliable informant that was
Mhm.
orchestrated between her and JD Carlson. Your appearance at the city hall, following all the rules. I mean, you put on a facial covering for that,
Mhm.
only to find staff not wearing their face coverings. When you said, "Well, if they don't have to, I don't have to having city attorney's office staff unlawfully use a panic device and then have that covered up by now candidate for sheriff Jeff Strom. And no one ever held accountable for the unlawful use of that panic device ever. No one. That was a crime. It wasn't like literally a crime. Like an actual crime was committed in prosecuting you. Not just a violation of your civil rights, but an actual crime was committed. No one. Lots of people watched the video, but no one ever took any action. And so here we are, to basically 2 years removed, and the city got rid of Martinez, could not find an attorney that was capable of handling this properly, And my understanding is on Friday they tried to get you to go along with them, and we'll bring Richard here in a minute. And you guys said no, go pound sand, and they came back a short time later and told you we're done, we're not doing this anymore.
Right.
Hindsight being what it is, was it worth the fight?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Absolutely, it was worth the fight, and you know why it was? Because it was the right thing to do. TC, it was the right thing back then. I think about that, 2 years, and really, we've been doing this for closer to 3 years because when that first shutdown in March of 2020, that's when this our whole lives were, as well as everybody else, we're all going, what's going on? So we did that first shutdown, and then the second shutdown
two
came.
weeks to flatten the curve.
Right. Then the second,
and you complied.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. Just for the fear of unknowns. Nobody really knew what
Right.
was going on. So let's figure this out.
It wasn't like you went into you weren't. I mean, and don't. This isn't a critique of you, but you weren't this crazy radical rebel. You weren't TC at that time. Like I was walking around. Like I was making excuses to go to Lowe's. I was not. When the mask mandates started, I wasn't following any of it. You were like, okay, this might be legit. We're gonna follow all of this. It was only after the brief reprieve of the summer of 2020 came along, and you had been struggling with the business, not by any of your business practices, but by the stuff the city had started to do to you because of the failing facade of the building prior. And we have that video where we had you and your accountant on, talked about the threads that were all interlaced and whatnot. You ended up saying, I can't, if I do this now, it's done. I'm done. I'm like, I'm going to lose no matter what. And so you went with that group of 100 and some businesses. And I think it was you and like 5 others, okay.
We opened up in the fall. What happened was I told my husband, I said, we cannot survive another shutdown. And Walz came around with another illegitimate shutdown. And we actually have emails referring to this shutdown, and that maybe we can talk about as we get into this a little bit further. Maybe my attorney would like to even speak to that. And so in the fall of 2020, Walz comes around with another full shutdown for restaurants. And I had said to Vern, I said, there's no way we can survive this. I have 2 choices. I either shut down completely, close our doors, we're done, we figure out how to pay the debt off, or I open up because it's my right, because I have that choice. It's a constitutionally protected, God-given right. I'm sick of this. We're tired of, we're not making it. I had to lay off employees, and, we've gone through all of that before. So I decided, we're going to do the right thing. And, the other thing too, is it was never about me and my little life and my little business. It was about surviving this and making a statement and saying we have rights as Americans. We still have our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, etc.
And ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, that's the exact same copy of the Constitution that she's been carrying since I met her.
It's getting a little tattered.
Yeah.
Might have to get her a new one here pretty soon.
So we, I go back and I joke in the fall, in November, actually, when Walz shut us down again. And we made the choice. I made the choice. Okay, we're going to stay open. And I said, we've done our research and we know what the risks are. And I laugh now. I had no idea, you guys, what I would go through over the next 2 years, the course of the following 2 years. No idea, TC. I said I thought I knew. We did our research and we knew like maybe that much. And oh my gosh, my life was blown apart and has been for the last, couple of years. And not just me, not just me, but my husband, our family, supporters, our friends.
You've lost You've gained a lot of supporters. Angie just made this comment. Lisa and Vern are the most unselfish people I have ever met. You two are remarkable. And Angie, she's an unselfish individual herself.
Yes.
So for her to say that about you guys is, and there are other comments, but if anybody has a question, especially when we bring Richard on, the best way to get a question answered, because I don't always see everything as it's scrolling by, our super chats, even if it's $1, it gives me a highlight. So if there's definitely something you want to say for Lisa or Vern, or a question you want to ask to Lisa or Vern or Richard when we bring them in, please try and do a super chat, because I don't want to miss something important in a question. But Lisa, you've lost, not only have you gained friends and allies and supporters, but you've also lost friends,
Mm-hmm.
compatriots, in the sense of being fellow business owners who have turned their back on you. You've lost family through this. I mean, and you have not been shy in telling the story about Kelly Dawn Martinez trying to submit a letter from your daughter-in-law to the court as a character witness against you.
Wasn't that was that at the arraignment or the pretrial hearing?
One of the two.
Pretrial hearing. It was amazing. Of course, I
Even
immediately
the judge in that situation was like, no.
no, I immediately objected 3 times over. Objection, and he didn't allow it. Of course,
That was the one thing that the judge got right.
Well, that and allowing me to stay in the courtroom.
There you go. All right,
Okay.
2 things.
Two things. Oh.
Yeah.
So, the thing that is, you and I have talked about this. You made the decision to go pro se and sui juris in this, and we had a conversation about the legal system and whatnot, and this is where we're going to get ready to bring Richard in. Hindsight, there again, being what it is, hindsight being 2020. We don't know that you wouldn't have been convicted last December. The deck was stacked against you. They, even if you had brought Richard in earlier, they might have, the way they were operating, they probably would have held him in contempt. So if he brought up the Constitution and tried to make that argument, but you were shut down immediately because.
Well, I wasn't allowed to present my defense.
Yeah, you could not, which is actually was a foreshadowing of the exact same thing. Not comparing you to Alex Jones, don't get me wrong. But if you actually do a deep dive into the case against Alex Jones, the reason that Jones ended up losing had very little to do with a factual representation of what actually took place, but it had everything to do with the fact that his defense was controlled, not his defense attorneys, but the prosecution, the civil prosecution in this case, the civil attorneys, and the judge ordered him to not talk about exonerating evidence that showed that you can't bring these things up. And we're seeing this. I just was watching a program today. They were talking about another case out in Colorado. Exact same thing. Judges ordering no defense. You cannot bring this up. You cannot bring this up. You cannot bring this up. You cannot say these things. You cannot say that. And we're seeing this play out over and over and over again. And you were on the cusp of that here in Minnesota, because the more I talk to people and I tell them, look, the judge literally agreed with the prosecution that Lisa couldn't talk about the Constitution because she's not a constitutional attorney or a constitutional expert or a subject matter expert on the Constitution. Therefore, she can't talk about it. What? And there went your entire argument. Like you literally had no excuse at that point to challenge the validity of the law of the executive orders if you couldn't lean on the foundation of United States law, which is the Constitution, and they ripped that from you.
Right. We were all ready to prepare. I was prepared, I should say, to go in and present my defense being constitutional, statutory, and case law. And because of the motion of limine that the judge had approved prior, that was presented by the prosecutor, which of course we objected to. And of course he ruled in favor of the prosecutor. So we had no defense, and he warned me ahead of time. He said, if Ms. Hanson, if you attempt to bring up constitutional law or law to the jury, I will hold you in contempt of court. Don't do that. Well, of course, again, this was my, we had a strategy going in, and this was my defense. The real law, rule of law was my defense. And going in, I did several times attempt to bring up, I started to bring up constitutional law or whatever, and I was threatened over and over again. The Judge Buetel, would tell the jury to retract what I had said, and that I would not be presenting any kind of law to them. And at the end of the trial, he would present the law to them. He would tell the jury what the law was. So,
and in his summation of his charging orders to the because I sat there through, I walked out. You know, well, I walked out to go to Subway while you guys went to go and collect yourselves.
right.
But, like literally, people, Lisa and Vern and I, we know each other. This isn't just this thing we do. He flat out didn't even mention, he literally did not mention anything about whether or not any of this stuff was constitutional at all. And when the jury came back with their guilty verdict on you that December day, just prior to the worst outbreak of tornadoes in the history of the state of Minnesota, by the way, in December. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. He dressed you down in the courtroom for 30 minutes on misdemeanor charges. But now all of a sudden we're in this situation where the city of Albert Lea has had enough. They've dropped all these charges, and you prior to pre-trial and whatnot coming up, decided that you were going to bring on an actual attorney here in the state of Minnesota. And I know some people are like, I don't trust any attorneys. And I'm in one of those people, like, I don't trust the legal system. It's not necessarily individual attorneys I don't trust. I just don't trust the justice system in the state of Minnesota right now. But you brought on Richard Dahl, and so we're going to just distract Richard from his relaxing listening here and bring him in. Richard, thank you for there we go. Richard was asleep. There we go. Richard, thanks for.
It's okay. I just need a nap once in a while. I got my Steve Bannon look tonight. My hair was crazy.
And I was like, who's he look like? That's it. It's Steve Bannon. There we go. Richard, thanks for being willing to come on. So you get a phone call from this Lisa Hanson, and she's like, hey, I'd like to hire you as my attorney. And you were like, are you crazy? I'm not tackling that. No, you took it on.
No, I mean, Lisa actually called me last year, and she wanted to go the constitutional law route, and I wasn't in favor of doing it the way that she proposed, because I don't entirely trust the people that are doing it. I mean, every time you go down any road, talking to anybody today, you don't know if they're a government agent or not. I mean, I don't know. I was talking to one of their people, and he was talking to me from Panama. Well, what is he doing in Panama? So obviously he wasn't. He didn't feel comfortable being in the continental United States. Then they did have people actually working here, but I'm just saying to you that, it made me think maybe he's a government spook. I don't know what his thinking was. And I mean, you have to, in the 1890s, in the late 1800s, they changed it so that they basically, they changed the civil procedure so the jury couldn't engage in jury nullification. And before that time period, juries were allowed to judge the law and judge the facts. And it's really difficult to undo, 100 years of law, over 100 years of law, by a pro se plaintiff like Lisa. So I want to get into a little bit why, to give people a little perspective on the legal aspect of this. And I want you to understand it's completely fraudulent. And everybody knows about the Jacobson case, that the media they kept referring to the Jacobson case, the Jacobson case, the Jacobson case. And the Jacobson case was a vaccine case. Okay, it's a vaccine case. Okay, that's not a lockdown case. That is not a case involving a situation where they quarantine someone. Okay, so they're first of all, they are applying a vaccine case to basically quarantines. Okay, so that's the first fraud that the left did. They went all the way back to find a vaccination case. And if you read the case, and if you look at the historical context of the case, basically they were trying to get local Native Americans in Massachusetts, forcing them to get vaccinated with a smallpox vaccine. And they didn't care how they got it done. And the court was actually, if you really read between the lines, evidence, in my view, they evidenced discriminatory attitudes towards the Native Americans, who actually may have been right about trying to avoid the vaccination. So, and then all they said basically, you know what, if you leave the area, if you pay a small fine, you know, that's all you have to do. And so the case has been totally misread, taken out of context to the point beyond anything you can imagine. And I can tell you there's a law review out there, which I have basically handed over to every court that I've been into. And that law review article says you can't quarantine somebody without clear and convincing evidence. That under the due process clause, you can't quarantine people without clear and convincing evidence that you have a need to do that. And
Right.
so they took basically 100 years of quarantine law and they flushed it down the toilet. That's the only analogy I can really think of, because that law has disappeared. The law on quarantine, which is a solid body of law, is disappeared. Where did that law go? I mean, you're going to tell me that it disappeared and we can't talk about that? I mean, and I mean, I'll give you just a little bit. There may be people listening that are, you know the law or a little sophisticated. In Minnesota, I mean, during at least one period, I know Michelle Bachmann was in the Senate, and Michelle Bachmann was as you know, was a staunch supporter of protecting our freedoms, and was concerned about the encroachment of gay rights in the school, which now we see that they're just bringing in drag queens to our kids right now, right? So, I mean, and I don't want to get into that too far, but I'm saying to you, she was a staunch supporter saying, look, we don't hate anybody. However, children are children. We need to protect them.
There are time and place aspects to every argument. And her argument in that particular case is the government-run school system a time and place situation? That's
and what age is the right age to discuss issues involving sex? And kids, they mature at different rates. Certainly 5 years old is not the time to bring in a drag queen into school. I don't believe any time is actually, but let's just put that aside. So Michelle was doing that, and she was also there in the Senate protecting our rights, because even back then they knew that they could use a health scare situation to try to be draconian. She was there. She was really on this. And I've known Michelle, and I held a fundraiser that didn't raise much money one time for her, but she's just a wonderful, wonderful, special person and a great politician.
Well, Richard, would you say that the crumbling of that, if you would, the quarantine law really kind of started when Minnesota codified its medical and I can't even remember what chapter it's in. Is it chapter 12? I don't.
I would not. That's what I was kind of getting to explain this to you. What they did was the quarantine law that we had. Actually, I think it's a little below the constitutional standard of the case law. If you were to bring in that law review article, and I think it's clear and convincing evidence under the due process clause to quarantine someone. But here's Minnesota law, and here's what I've been arguing in my case is there's a statute in the Administrative Procedure Act, and that statute says the Administrative Procedure Act in sections 14.001 to 14.69 does not apply to, under subsection B, emergency powers in section 12.31 to 12.37. That is the Emergency Powers Act. That's the main, that's not all of it, but it's most of the Emergency Powers Act.
Right.
So if you look at that there, what they're doing to Lisa and all these people, they were taking their food license. And once they took their food license, then they could attack them and say, you're operating without a license. And that's how they did this. Well, I don't know what in the hell is this. What is this section in the Administrative Procedure Act, but saying under the Emergency Powers Act, you have courts and administrative agencies, you have no jurisdiction, zero, none,
Right.
zero, nada, to take people's license during an emergency. That was put in there in the 50s and re-upped 5 times. I mean, I went through, I did the legislative research on this. I pointed it out to every court in 5 or more cases I've taken up on appeal, and the Minnesota appellate courts, to their shame, refused to interpret it. Not one of those, not one appellate decision even considered the argument. I mean, that's just what they're doing now. It's like the whole situation with, we're using the Jacobson case to interpret what we should do in a situation involving quarantine, and we're calling it a lockdown instead of a quarantine. Why are we calling what? There's no lockdown in historically in our law. We're in the living. That's a pile of dog turds as high as I can pile them. I don't even know where that concept comes from. That's absolutely outrageous that they think they can get away with this. I mean, anybody, even you wouldn't even have to be very brilliant to understand that
Right.
that is absolutely ridiculous, and that the lines of law are different between quarantine law and vaccine law. And not only that, I have to say the Jacobson case, if you look at during that era when the Jacobson case was decided, I even pointed this out to the court at one point. During that era, that was the era of substantive due process, which most people don't know what that means. Substantive due process means that property and contract rights have the same status as freedom of speech, for instance, okay? So the number of laws, like health and safety laws, that the Supreme Court during that 1890s, early 1900s issue, all the way up to the Depression when Franklin Roosevelt was, doing the court packing, that was substantive due process, economic freedom, all that sort of thing. And they were striking laws down right and left. And within 3 months of the Jacobson case, they struck down a bunch of laws in New York based on substantive due process. There were health and safety laws. And yet they said, you're going to have to take a vaccine in Jacobson. Completely inconsistent. And when you take the case in context, it was actually nothing more than a discriminatory case against Native Americans. Let's be honest. So does that surprise us that the Democrat Party would use, the party of Jim Crow and the party of slavery would use a case that was nothing more than a case originally designed to attack Native Americans and force them to take the smallpox vaccine? Completely out of context of what the Supreme Court was doing at the time, if you put it in the context. So I don't, go ahead.
It's not very often that I get anybody on my own program that gives me a run for my money, by the way. I love having an attorneys in because they can actually talk more than me.
I mean, I can go on because I'm the one that the court, when they see my appellate briefs coming up, they know they've got something to deal with. The problem is, I'll be honest with you, I don't think any of them have enough background. I went to a top 5 law school. I went to University of Chicago Law School. I went to a really good law school, and I went to Knox College undergrad, which would be like Carleton College up here, or St. Olaf. Actually, St. Olaf and Carleton were in the Midwest Conference back when I was playing football. So it would be akin to that. And I had a professor, Lane Sunderland, who was a scholar that studied constitutional law at the Claremont Institute in Southern California, one of the most reputable places. And then Dennis Stevens was another professor I had, very good professor. I think he taught at Augustana in South Dakota. Is it South Dakota or yeah, it'd be South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know of an Augustana College up there?
That's,
I think
yeah, August. Yeah, I think Augustana is right. For people who are watching, I'm trying to play the video that I shot the day that Lisa and I met while we're talking, just so you guys can kind of get a little bit of the juxtaposition of the dangerous nature of her business, the horrible things that she was doing by keeping her business open. Richard, when Lisa reached out to you subsequent to her just the atrocious conviction that she experienced at the hands of a really corrupted system, in the sense of how it was handled for her, what was your first response? Did you feel like there was a lot of damage that was already done to her case and to her situation, or did you feel walking into it that there was an impact that you could have? And I mean, obviously you took the case.
Yep.
But did you really walk into this going, no, we can actually fight this second round of charges, and be effective? Did you foresee any of this stuff happening that has subsequently happened?
I mean, I'll just say to you that I looked at the pleadings and I looked at the appeals she did, with the kind of like talking to the constitutional lawyers and all that. And I was fascinated by it a little bit, right? And I wanted to read it. I did read it, and really it was the same language that the lawyers would have used 100 years ago. It's in the same context as the pre-1930s constitutional law, the way lawyers would have argued at that time. And as we all know, Franklin Roosevelt fundamentally changed the U.S. Constitution. And what he did is he made contract and property rights became secondary to liberty rights, as if they didn't exist anymore, which cannot be the case, but that's what actually happened. So that's why in the 1960s, all you had was liberty, 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 nothing, but it was nothing anymore about contract rights. And even up until some of the groups, that have brought back our religious liberty rights. I mean, there was a time period when our religious liberty, starting really, I would say, in the 40s, when the Franklin Roosevelt appointed Supreme Court judges just devastated us and took the Bible out of school and then prayer out of school in 63, I think. And that's what happened then. And I don't think until the 1980s, we started to have a pushback on that. So, but in any event, going back to the issue that I was talking about before in that section of the statute, I want you guys to know there is a section in the Minnesota statute, in the Emergency Management Act 12.39, Minnesota Statutes 12.39, that specifically gives the Minnesota Department of Health the jurisdiction to handle quarantine. Why did let's ask ourselves this, why did the courts and everybody ignore the fact that that's a section that you deal with in terms of a quarantine? That was right there, explicit terms, and yet they were using allowing the Minnesota Department of Health to revoke everybody's license, despite the fact that it's clear in the section I cited 14.03 that the jurisdiction had been taken away from the Minnesota Department of Health to use the revocation of licenses as a tool. And they did that specifically to take that tool away from them. So the only thing they could do would be to use quarantine.
Yep.
And the other provision, they're using another provision in the Minnesota Department, or in the Emergency Act. There's like 12.31 and all the definitions there.
Mm-hmm.
They're using that to say, well, we have the right to control travel. Okay, what they're talking about, we're talking about ingress and egress and travel. What we're talking about is, let's say the nuclear power plant had an incident on 94, the one near Monticello, right? Or the one on the, it's on the Mississippi River down in
Prairie Lakes. I think is it Prairie Lakes is what it's called, the nuclear power plant right off the res.
It's down there by Red Wing, right?
Yeah, I think it's real close to the reservation. Yeah.
So I mean, if you're driving by, yeah, they're going to control the streets and the traffic and that sort of thing. Or,
during an actual emergency meltdown situation.
Right. Or you were referring to earlier in your discussion about the fact that you were observing Antifa and BLM, which is the new Black Panthers, when you were in Minneapolis. Well, I mean, let's look at that for just a second. I mean, that's exactly what they were talking about by those sections referring to controlling traffic. In other words, we're not going to let more Black Panthers or more BLM people or more Antifa people into that area. We're not going to do that. That's what those statutes are talking about. And there had to be a narrative design going all the way up to the highest people that they had been doing for years to prepare this. And they slammed it down everybody's throat, all the way down to local judges, even in the little, the relatively low population state of Minnesota,
right,
compared to New York or whatever.
Do you, as you look at the case, going into it, and we're in this position now, Richard, where obviously Albert Lea, whatever the case might be, and we're not entitled to know, but we have inside sources that I'm talking to that are telling me that the departure of the prosecutor, the city attorney in this situation isn't as simple as everybody seems to think, that she just took a different job, that there are other things playing out.
The city just wanted to take a different direction, in my view. And I don't know this. I know this only third hand.
Right.
So I don't want anybody to say that I know. What my impression is that the city wanted to, there's an election coming up. They were scared of conservative voting and voting the entire city council out if they potentially keep pushing the same way that they were doing this. And so Miss Martinez, in my view, based on what I've heard, and I have never met her, I've never talked to her. You
are a blessed man for that very one thing right there.
Here, just a second. I wanted to say my impression of her from the things I've heard and I've read is she is a radical Marxist, and she did not care about anything, and she was going to push an agenda. And I don't know the judge, so I can't comment. My impression of the judge is a little different. I think that he is a Democrat that is, I go along with what the party line is. And so that's my impression of the judge, my impression of her. So when she was let go, we saw an opportunity.
Right.
We subpoenaed the governor's office, not the governor. We subpoenaed Minnesota Department of Health to try to get more. We had some of the emails that showed that they created the second lockdown. They called it, I would call it really the quarantine, which that was what Lisa got. The two charges were from the second lockdown on the quarantine. And so we sent those subpoenas out. And then I was discussing, well, I filed those, and all my services was still going to Miss Martinez, even though she was no longer there. Inappropriately, she was staying in the case, and in my view, trying to control the case, talking to people. Yeah.
And this was subsequent to her actual resignation being finalized and her no longer being with the city, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So she was actually taking part in this from a personal. There's no other way to look at it. It was a personal perspective. It wasn't. It wasn't a professional. She, like, the minute she walked away from Albert Lea, she lost all professional attachment to this particular case, and this remained personal for her. And she was actually trying to influence the outcome.
This is my personal belief,
Right.
based on emails that I have and whatever, and some conversations I had with people that know where she went to go being employed, because I know I have personal relationships with some of the people, you know, down there, because I worked down there for certain people a few years ago. Anyway, the point is that my impression was, and I don't have this firsthand because all I have are emails from various people, and my impression was she was trying to control the case, even though she was no longer employed by the city.
When you made the decision to start giving subpoenas to people, I don't know what the proper way to conjugate that verb is. When you started sending out subpoenas, one of the people that you subpoenaed was Jan Malcom, if I understand the nature of this correctly. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes.
Do you believe that because the co-host of one of the series that I do, Christine, is absolutely convinced that she believes that the state could not have Malcom deposed. That if Malcom is deposed, it's going to crumble everything that the Walz administration did for the 2 years that they were doing them. Do you think that played a part in some of what happened here the last week?
Well, yes, I do, and let me say this: it's just more pressure, because there were discussions between the governor, between the Minnesota Department of Health, and other people regarding basically, in my view, from reading those emails, and they've already been out there for a while. They're not recent, but I put them attached to my subpoena and say, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And basically they say they conjured this up. In other words, they were looking for evidence to justify it. And so even under this Jacobson standard, under the supposed, we have a rational basis for this lockdown, right? Under the Jacobson standard is a rational basis. So if they're making stuff up, that's not a rational basis for due process. And if Lisa had not been arguing in the old, more archaic 100 years ago language and said, okay, since they forced this rational basis from an old case that's inapplicable and should be dealt with in a different way, because there's 100 years of a law involving quarantine. So, okay, let's just take their assumption, because they're forcing this on us. They lose, because how do they have a rational basis to to make this up? You don't have a rational basis to make up facts that justify what you're doing, right? I mean, you say, I want you to go out there and find the statistics that support us, is basically what my reading of those emails is saying. The other thing I'd like to comment on is the only jurisdiction that the Minnesota Department of Health had under an emergency was the authority to quarantine under 12.39. And the Division of Emergency Management was given the primary jurisdiction to enforce everything under the Minnesota Emergency Management Act. Everything. So the fact that Jan Malcom was running the emergency situation is inexcusable. They had to know that Jan Malcom running the entire Minnesota Emergency Management Act was an act that was illegal, unethical, and just plain flat out wrong. I mean, they could be sued for this. Jan Malcom didn't have that authority. It was taken away by the Administrative Procedure Act section. It was handed to specific sections in Chapter 12, giving it to the Minnesota Emergency Management Act to do this. And then Malcom was cut a piece out in 12.39, and I've argued all of this to the appellate court. And 12.39 was what she had. It cites the exact statutes and the standard for quarantine. And did Jan Malcom use those standards? Did the city attorney use those standards to quarantine Lisa's restaurant? They did not. So, I mean, everything they've done is absolutely illegitimate. And it was just, they didn't care. I mean, there was an article that came out as either in the Gateway Pundit or in one of the other related DC Clothesline. And it's about what happened in 1917 when Lenin took power in Russia. If you know the history, the Marxist communists only got 25% of the vote. So what did they do? They just cheated. They just cheated. And the circumstances of the cheating is very similar to what the Democrats did in 2020. You should go back and look at that history and look at what they did. And that's the only way you can understand this lack of law, complete lawlessness by Governor Walz. And I would point this out. You know, they keep running this commercial against Dr. Jensen, and they keep saying that he says Jensen says it's a black hole to put more money into education. Well, and here's what Dr. Jensen means by this. Governor Walz, another teacher, he was a PE teacher down in southern Minnesota, at least from my perspective, because I'm further up north. He's a Marxist. And all these teachers are Marxists. And then they wonder why we don't want to give money to the schools. Why would we want our children to be taught how to be good little commies, right? I mean, I don't. But so, go ahead.
Let's. My co-host for Navigating the Northwoods is geeking out on all the lawyer speak. By the way, she messaged me. She's like, "This is amazing." When you look at prepping for pretrial, prepping for the actual trial, you know, with a jury and whatnot, you at no point ever considered as Lisa's attorney taking a plea offer. In this situation,
it was offered that a gentleman named Kylo.
So who is Kylo besides Kylo Ren from the crappy Star Wars sequels?
You know, and you know what? You're not. I looked at his name when I saw it, and I saw the same. I thought of the same stupid analogy. Is that terrible? So anyway,
great minds, Richard. Great minds.
I'm just saying to you that just because of his name, and maybe that was improper, I had a negative connotation. But he told me in a conversation that he made an offer, and which I rejected immediately. But and I said, "Well, what's your position with the city?" He was claiming that he was working for the city. I didn't believe he had the authority to work for the city. What he was doing was he was doing work under Miss Martinez before she left her employment with the city of Albert Lea. And so he was doing like independent.
So is this almost like a reach out, like I'm leaving and I'm reaching out to this law firm to take on the prosecution of this case? Is a situation like that, or?
Yeah, what was, like I said, Ms. Martinez was trying to control the case by using Kylo.
So she was handpicking people to prosecute this?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, as you know, the Bottler firm from Austin has been chosen to handle the cases for the city of Austin.
Is that Bowder, Moss, and Blahnik?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They've been handed over everything, and they didn't have the same interest because they weren't so politicized. I'm sure Martinez called them. I'd make a bet that she was putting pressure on them to try to do this case. But what happened was Kylo got in the middle of this because he was probably getting direct calls from Martinez, because otherwise, why would he do
Once
this?
again, opinion, not a statement.
Not fact.
Yeah.
But if I got their phone calls, I'm making a bet that the phone calls trace directly back to her. So what happens is
which firm does he work for?
He works on his own. He's got his own firm.
Okay, so he has he's the sole litigator there in that place, or
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I don't know that he has any other.
But it's his own firm.
Yeah. He is subcontracting work from Miss Martinez in the city of Albert Lea. But
And
I mean, the minute that she's gone,
is he local then to this area?
yeah, he's either is he in Albert Lea or in Austin?
He's in Albert Lea.
He's in Albert Lea then. Okay. I just didn't recall from. So he's trying to, in my view, settle this case on behalf of Miss Martinez, because I can't imagine the big firm like the Bottler firm over in Austin is going to hire him to do this. I just don't see him doing that. So I don't believe it. I forward all these emails over to Lisa. Lisa promptly forwards them to the city council to let them know what's going on, or at least, I don't know, whoever she did over there sent them to. And obviously the city council did not want this to happen either. So I'm assuming that there was political pressure from the city council and from maybe the governor's office or the attorney general's office or Minnesota Department of Health. We don't want to answer these subpoenas. And this was intentional. I intentionally subpoenaed them. I intentionally pushed this case the way I pushed it to try to get this case dismissed, because I felt it was a political prosecution. And so I used political means. In other words, in a backhanded way, it was legal means, because I have, as a lawyer, I can issue subpoenas if I think that they're relevant to the case. And I believe the subpoenas were relevant because of I could challenge the rational basis for prosecuting or the actual rational basis for the entire lockdown, right? So
Right.
I issued the subpoenas on that basis, sent them out, and then I put, Lisa and I were putting pressure from different angles. She was doing it to the city. I was doing it to the people I was putting subpoenas on, and they all decided that, you know what, the election November 8th is coming up. It's a bad time to fight this. And so that's what real lawyers do. They realize that, I mean, even though I probably was going into a bad situation in front of Buetel, given that he is, a loyal Democrat, we just leveraged that situation so that we didn't have to face a negative situation in court. Yeah, anybody could have lost her case. There was even a good attorney, so I don't know that it would have made a difference in that first case, because they rejected most of my arguments in the appellate courts. I will note this. This is something that I think that you must be a pastor, right? Are you a pastor of the Black Robe Regiment? Because I'm familiar with what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lay theological nerd. That's what.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I still respect that, but in any event,
I appreciate that, because normally I get you're a what?
the Black Robe Regiment was,
Yep.
so people should know this if they don't know this, was the group of pastors that preached for independence during
And their
the
congregants, really.
revolution. What?
And their congregants.
Right. I mean, in that time, you didn't have to go to seminary to become a minister or a pastor or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right. We
So-
now refer to it as cemetery.
Yes. So in any event, somebody wrote, "Why isn't she being charged, Martinez?" It has nothing to do with that right now. I mean, I felt, and I think Lisa felt, that we had an opportunity to get out of this situation because it wasn't politically expedient for the city of Albert Lea, and it wasn't politically expedient, especially for Jan Malcom and the Minnesota Department of Health, to answer these subpoenas.
It would have been absolutely destructive because if you got her into a deposition or you got her into on the stand, if they really wanted to push that this far, you would have actually dismantled. My understanding of how all of this is played out, you would have been able to dismantle everything that they used against Lisa. Do you think it could have had an impact on an appeal to her previous conviction? I know that's a tough question. I
Really
occasionally ask one of those.
And the truth is, she really should have had to have appeared in court, because I issued the subpoena for appearance at the trial. And I believe that today you can do depositions for court, but traditionally you couldn't even do that.
Yeah, I was going to say prior to 2020, there would have been it would have been straight to testimony.
But I issued 5 subpoenas, so even if I couldn't have gotten Jan Malcom, I could have maybe gotten one of the underlings to testify. And so I knew that getting Jan Malcom there, they might say, well, she's too busy. So, I mean, that's where that laid out.
What was as you look at this now, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you are showing appreciation to Lisa and Vern and to Richard by sharing this, because this story is really important, and because it's nowhere near done. We're not done at all with this. And so like this video, comment on the video, and share the video, because we need people to understand this is the number one thing that I've been telling people. Minnesotans have a very short memory. They have forgotten. It literally, you walk around, you might still see that occasional person walking around with a facial covering on, but everybody's gone back to life as normal. They've forgotten about businesses being destroyed. They've forgotten about livelihoods being taken away from people. They've forgotten about the damage that's been done to people who stood up and spoke out against all of this garbage. And so this crap that's been going on has laid a groundwork, if you will, for the destruction of states like Minnesota and destruction for our republic, because they're counting on you guys to forget what happened to Lisa.
I think they've forgotten a little bit, but I got to tell you that the damage they've done to our economy.
You think it's going to be their undoing?
Well, I think that here's the deal. All that, you know this and I know this. All the big, like let's say Cargill, the Cargill family or whatever. I think their name now is actually, most of them is not even Cargill, because they had girls instead of boys. So, but that family basically runs Cargill, and they are New World Order, in favor of world government and all that sort of thing. And all of the big, very wealthy, with a certain exceptions, like the My Pillow guy, all of them are for the New World Order, for radical environmentalism, and that's even another conversation, which I believe that their entire basis for this radical environmentalism is a flat out lie. But the bottom line is they want to reduce world population. That's their number one goal, and they want to make the environment apparently pristine. And so they are cutting us off of fossil fuels, which is going to kill us. And this is.
Do you think that everything? Let's take a state like Minnesota in this case, Richard. As you look at how a lot of these cases have played out, do you think that the pandemic situation played into their agenda, or do you think
they're going to release? They're going to release another virus. You know that. I know that. They've already talked about they're doing up in Boston. They've got a virus that killed 10 times the number of mice. that the first virus did. It's related to this. They're doing what do they call that? You remember Rand Paul had a name for that when he was cross-examining Dr. Fauci, where they enhanced the virus. So the question is, why are they experimenting with enhancing a virus to kill us? This is the first round of this, and let's go back and look at this historically. Just take one step back. Who was the first really New World Order president we had? That first person was Woodrow Wilson, who got us into World War I. And Woodrow Wilson, just right after World War I, what did they have? They had the Spanish flu pandemic. And if you go back and you look at that, there was the same fear-mongering campaign that there was during the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you study this, in fact, is Dr. Fauci, it came out in an article that a friend of mine posted, which I actually attached this to one of my exhibits in a case. And it's a 2008 article from Fauci and some other people. He was a contributor to this article that documented how the procedures used to treat people during the Spanish flu killed more people than it helped. And if you and I were to go down that road, we would go down the road and we would probably agree that remdesivir killed more people by shutting their kidneys down.
You're trying to get this video taken down already, aren't you?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying to you, all of this is connected. Our first globalist New World Order president was
he oversaw. Yeah, he oversaw the Spanish flu.
He oversaw the Spanish flu,
Yeah,
and then the
absolutely.
next president like that was Franklin Roosevelt, and he finally got the global
Right.
thing started with
the two of the top three of the worst presidents in the history of the United States in that situation. I won't name I won't give you my pick for the worst.
Right, and you know, anyway. my grandfather worshipped Franklin Roosevelt. You know, but what you've got to understand is that they created the crisis on purpose. So, I mean, don't worship the man that presents himself to solve the crisis and that's exactly what it says in Revelation about the Antichrist. The Antichrist, in my view, will be the man that creates a crisis that causes the world to come together in a global government, right? I mean, how is that different than what happened during the Great Depression? They create the crisis, and then the man that comes along that says, I'm going to bring you all together, and whatever comes forward. And so there's two devices they're using. Right now, Biden is pushing nuclear war with Russia. Why is he doing that at this time? He's doing it. An apparent reason is it basically, I take it as an implied threat to every conservative American that we're going to push ourselves into a nuclear war if you don't go along with our program. That's what I take that as.
When you look at Lisa's case, how much of what she has experienced and how much of what happened on Friday, because my understanding, and I'm going to paraphrase, my understanding was there was a call or contact was made that we're going to, hey, let's push this out another year. Is my as it was just a grotesque amount of time to stretch this out, and your collective response, Lisa, Vern, Richard, your collective response was basically pound sand. We'll see you in court.
Well, I mean, no, my response was I was glad to see that it was kicked out for a year, because immediately my first response was, well, there's an election between now and when that goes to trial. And so we plan to do something to put political pressure right at that point. At least I did. I don't know if Lisa realized that was my thinking, was that
she's pretty sharp. She might have been ahead of you on that one.
She probably was. But my point to you was that's exactly, kind of what I thought is around, and either that or I would just, because they never responded to my discovery. And I waited on that. I just let it sit there. And then I was going to use that for an excuse to continue the trial if I had to, because they had never responded to my discovery. And I was hoping that Jensen would win the governorship and maybe give her a pardon or something like that. I mean, we were looking at every angle that we could look at. There was no angle, I don't think, that we didn't look at or think about, or either we talked about it or we thought about it.
Right.
Because, I mean, at this point, they're willing to use any means to destroy Lisa's business and our lives in any way, shape, or form. So why shouldn't we be willing to fight back? And I don't mean fight in a violent way. I mean,
no, you do not have to do the caveats on my channel. There's certain things we avoid, but that one, fight back, doesn't bother me. So how soon after they sent that proposal, that 1-year proposal to you, and as the attorney of record for Lisa in this case, how soon after you sent that did they get back to you with, well, we've decided to drop all the charges?
This happened in 1 week, buddy. We didn't the only thing I did was I filed a discovery request and a motion and my appearance, and I didn't do it. I sat on them and I waited for this week, the week before election, and then I pushed it. That's what we did. It's that simple.
Is it dismissed with, without, there's no chance this is coming back?
I mean, they could try to bring it back. There's no doubt. It doesn't explicitly say it's without prejudice, but
Okay.
On the other hand, the implication is if it doesn't say that it's without prejudice, which every prosecutor I've ever known would have put in that order without prejudice if he intended that to be without prejudice. My impression is that no, it's with prejudice at this point. If they do bring this back, I'm going to sue them.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, that's essentially maybe the reason they kind of got the vibe that okay, if you keep pushing down a road that is it's wrong, we're gonna go to federal court and find a way to sue you, and maybe we'll find a federal judge. A lot of these judges in the beginning, they didn't maybe in my view didn't understand that this was all contrived. And I think that now, I think a lot of judges are patriots just like you and me. I don't think that they're all bad people because they ruled against me. I mean this sincerely. I
appreciate that clarification, because I think it's very easy in a situation, whether you're the attorney or you're the client, to look at a judge immediately and say it's an adversarial situation. In the case of Judge Joseph Buetel, it was adversarial. I was in the courtroom, so I saw it, but I don't see that as the case in every situation.
Well, I mean, here's what I think. I want to say this, and I want to ask you if you agree with this. I mean, from my point of view, I look at the law as that if I was sitting in the position of being a judge or a lawyer, I want to be principled to the extent that I can be principled. Obviously, I use tactical things like I did in this case. I use tactical positioning. However, that I want to be ethical. In fact, let me tell you this. The very minute that I was notified the case was dismissed, I informed the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and all of them that the subpoenas, I could not do them anymore, because I can't issue a subpoena and try to push that subpoena, because they were in the process of trying to respond to me without having, I don't have the right to do that anymore. The case is dismissed. So the minute that happens, I see that, I withdraw the subpoenas and say, hey, I can't push this anymore, and I got to thank you from the attorney general's office. That is the way I view. I am a conservative, but I am principled. And the problem is that most people.
And you're a lawyer. Those, like a conservative, principled lawyer.
Well, I mean, who was it that went to to law school and became born again. Was it the great preacher in Wesley in the 1700s? Was it John Wesley?
I don't know. Was it Wesley?
Wesley.
Yeah, Wesley. I think it was Wesley that went to English law school. Yeah.
He went to one of them went to law school, and
Yeah, one of the two brothers. Yeah.
Well, there was so much teaching in law school about moral principles that in reading how to be a lawyer, he became born again. I mean, that's how different the training was then than now. But to me, because I grew up in a Christian home, that wasn't a stretch. For most people that don't get taught those principles, they don't even. I'm sure that Judge Buetel and the appellate court they see this as a crisis and they want to do their part to help. You know what I'm saying? And that's not the way I see it. I don't want to see police officers pulling people over for no reason, even if it gets one drunk driver off the road. If the guy's driving straight down the road and he's not weaving, and the cop pulls him over just because he wants to check him out, which I see this happen all the time, it's wrong. It's not correct, because I mean, if that's the case, then there's none of us safe from a search, because a cop can make it up. So occasionally we've got to let people that are guilty go.
Pretextual stops are a massive problem in the state of Minnesota. Massive problem.
We've got to have limitations on power. And I think that all of the people, I hope that the people present here all would agree with these things, because without limitations on power, we have absolute tyranny, and we can't live under that. Look at the poor people in the Soviet Union, the oppression they lived under for so long. I can't imagine it. I mean, I would rather die than live under that kind of oppression.
I have made that comparison quite often. Like when I coined the phrase "the people's state of Marxisota," everybody laughed at me, and I'm like, "You guys have no idea. It's like we have our own East German Stasi." Albert Lea is just a great example of that. The rank and file officers are probably decent folk. I'm not arguing that, but the collusion between the city attorney's office, the city of Albert Lea itself, and the police department, and then to bring in the Department of Public Safety. And I have videos. Lisa knows what I'm talking about, where an undercover DPS officer is very surreptitiously recording me, pretending to talk on her phone to come into the protest, and shot video of a protest that was then coupled with video and photographs that were taken by a confidential, reliable informant, put into the business by the city of Albert Lea Chief of Police, J.D. Carlson. All of this stuff was done under the guise of saving one life. We were going to save one life. If that doesn't have a terribly spine-tingling, chilling, goosebump-raising effect on Minnesotans, and ultimately on the entire populace of our republic, that a business owner can go to jail for 90 days for keeping her business open, after juxtaposing the video that I just played, several of the videos that I just played, with not only do we have this attorney breaking the law on video, but we also have the juxtaposition of all these big box corporate stores being left open while Lisa's being like, that is exactly what you're talking about, is this Marxist mentality of, we're going to determine who's safe, we're going to determine who's okay, and as long as you do what we tell you to do, then you don't have anything to worry about. And that's precisely the problem that was established, and why Lisa's case, in my eyes, and Richard, if you disagree, or Lisa or Vern, kick in, because I don't think we've ever had Lisa be this quiet in one of my conversations.
The problem is that the ends justify the means, and the problem is that you and I are fighting the ends justifies the means people, and we would not do the same thing to them,
right?
Because you and I are we believe in God, we believe in the eternal, all-powerful God that's going to judge us. He is going to judge us and look at us and say, if this is, you're going to have to stand before the Lord God Almighty, and He's going to pronounce judgment on you for eternity as to where you're going to, whatever. They don't believe that. They believe the ends justify the means, and when you have that situation, I mean, it's very unfair for us. It's like trying to fight with someone that has no rules. They have no rules.
Well, because they get to change the rules. They
Yeah.
they get to change the rules on any given day. Like, you literally don't know what you're dealing with from day to day.
Absolutely not.
And that was actually, I think Lisa and I kind of had the periphery of this conversation, even about her going into, and Lisa, I'm sure you remember me going, have you looked at having an attorney? Have you, like, we did have that conversation, and
Once or twice.
yeah. And because I understand, in like a massive amount of respect, Lisa, you know how much I respect you and love you, and stood behind you, with that decision. But I knew what the courts were going to do. They were going to eat you alive with their legalese, with their jargon, at the very least. Not to mention, there again, the changing of the rules.
I gotta disagree with you there. I don't think they ate me alive.
No, I didn't. Not that you didn't hold your own.
No. I think what happened is, like you said just a moment ago, they make up the rules as they go. They ignored and did not address issues that we brought up in our documents, issue after issue after issue, violations on their part. None of that, almost all of it was ignored or not even brought up. Rule of law. Where is rule of law?
And they were able to do that, not because you weren't prepared, but because you weren't part of the not that Richard's part of the in crowd. He's clearly not. Especially with the Steve
But he's a
Bannon.
bar certified attorney. He's an attorney.
Right. He's bar certified, and so they're going to talk to him differently than they talk to you. They looked at you as a petulant child.
He did, and from the beginning, I think I shared with you too, TC, that people told me there's no way you're going to win. Number one, you're not an attorney. Number two, you're a woman.
Well, unless you're having a custody case in Minnesota. They're not on your side. But if you're a woman in a custody case in Minnesota, they're going to be. If you had been suing Vern for custody of the interchange, Vern would have been paying you child support for the interchange.
I can give you an example. I have a case right now that I can't talk about what it is, but the judge in the case was the prosecutor, and then he went in and he became the judge. Okay. And he was already in the prosecution's office during the time that they were considering prosecuting this case.
Okay, so let me understand this correctly. Was he prosecuting? Did he start out prosecuting the case, or he had just been a prosecutor in the same office?
He was the head prosecutor in the office. He was the county attorney.
Holy crap! Are you kidding me?
Then he became the judge, and he excluded this guy's evidence just to a point, and it went all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court. And they upheld all of this garbage.
He didn't recuse himself?
No.
How is he still a judge?
This is the point. The reason that I get things done is because I know that's unethical, and I would have it disbarred or disrobed, or at least if they wouldn't disrobe the judge for doing this, and I mean, I'm putting pressure on them right now on this very issue. At least if they don't disrobe him, I'm letting them know that, you can't do this. This is unacceptable.
And just so people understand, when Richard refers to disrobing for some of my more juvenile audience, he doesn't mean take his clothes off. That's just, but the
black robe that they wear when they play judge.
Yeah, when they play judge. So, Richard, I'm going to put you on the spot because I heard there might be a write-in campaign in the 3rd District Court going on.
It's not allowed because I didn't file some other stuff.
But there was talk of it.
Yes. I have to become a write-in. I would have had to have planned this out in their statutory requirements. They thought of it. In fact, I don't even know if I want to be a judge in their system. I like, I really get a kick out of, even when I lose or they kick me any which way they want to, I really don't care because they know I'm telling them the truth and they can feel it. They can feel the pain that I'm causing them because the truth has a sting. It
They
really
hate you.
has a
They hate
sting.
you for it.
Well, I mean, it's like the Bible says, the sword of truth coming out of the mouth of Christ. There's nothing more powerful. I mean, that's the sword is the tongue, and the shield is our faith, right? So I mean, it's very powerful. If you are speaking the truth, it's very powerful, and they can't deny it.
They
And
hate it.
they hate it,
Yep.
and it actually puts a dampening. It pushes them back. It holds the line against the evil, even when you lose a particular case.
Going forward in this situation, do you believe that the city of Albert Lea, in and of itself, between the city administrator or the city manager, whatever the official terminology is there, Richard or Lisa, actually, I want you both to answer this in your own way, because I know you'll both answer it differently. I'm not asking for you guys to lay out a game plan or a strategy, but do you believe that the city of Albert Lea is maybe to some degree trembling in fear of what could be coming down the pike for them, based on the maliciousness of the prosecution that took place under the watch of the mayor and the city council?
Go ahead, Lisa. You talk. You can go first this time.
I kind of wanted to hear your answer, Richard, because we haven't talked about that. But I think they should definitely be thinking about it, at the very least. We go back to, we've lived in the city for just outside of the city, but we have businesses in the city for almost 30 years. A-Best Sew and Vac is my husband's business for almost 30 years. It's a well-established business, and we've been a part of, a positive part of the city. I think we've been an asset to the city. We've raised our children here. We have 8 children. We've raised almost all of our children here. Some of our children still live here. We're a big part of the community. We've volunteered for, in many different capacities. And so I just think when, I look back at it, I guess customer service, TC, has always been something that Vern and I have, we're trained in, and it's something that we take very, very seriously, because we are in hospitality business and a service business, being the sewing machine and vacuum store. And so the way you treat people is very, very important. And unfortunately, through this whole process over the last couple of years, including the campaign when I ran for state senate, I had the opportunity to meet other business people in the area that, I had not prior. It really opened some doors. Where I'm getting at with all of this is, the city of Albert Lea has not been the friendliest city as in the recent past, not just to myself, but there's other individuals in the city as well. I think it's time for the city of Albert Lea to wake up and to make some positive changes, to, listen to the people, listen to the community, take care of your business people, take care of your community, take care of your citizens here. It's been a really unfriendly place, not just for myself. Again, I'll say that again. There's other people that I've spoken with that I absolutely wouldn't mention any names or their businesses, but there are some definite issues in Albert Lea. Albert Lea is a beautiful city. I think we would do well to, hey, maybe the city manager, and maybe some of the city employees, maybe the city council would like to go through some customer service training. I mean, I'd be happy to help out with that.
I could think of some people that might be pretty good at that.
But the point is that we need to do a better job as a city leadership. The city leadership needs to remember who they're serving, who pays their wages, who pays their salaries. It's the people of the community. And so I think they should be concerned. Absolutely. I think they should be concerned. Richard, I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I really want to say to this is, the one who did the greater wrong in this case is going to be, and surprisingly, some people may think, that I would really point the finger at Miss Martinez, but I do not. My guess is she's just a little Indian following the big chief, right? The people that knew what they were doing, that had many lawyers look at this down there at the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and at the Minnesota Department of Health, and at the Minnesota Department of Emergency Management. They're the ones that have evaluated this and know exactly the way things are supposed to be handled during an emergency. They know it was not handled that way. Those are the people with the, in my view, with the greater, they did the greater wrong in this case. And that's why, you know, from that perspective, but here's what I want to say about Albert Lea and the Minnesota City Council and those things is this. The problem we have is we have George Soros and his organizations funding local prosecutors, city prosecutors, county prosecutors. And why do we have this? Why in America can we have a man who's essentially a foreigner from Yugoslavia who assisted the Nazis in selling out the Jewish people? He's been interviewed on 60 Minutes, George Soros has, and admitted he slightly enjoyed selling out the Jews to the gas chamber. And he was a Jew, or he claims to be a Jew. So my question is, why is this man allowed to do that in this country? I mean, this is the problem, because in this entire COVID-19 thing, there was a massive, huge transfer to all these companies like Pfizer who became very wealthy. And there was so they took massive amounts of wealth from the middle class in this country, and they took it over to people like George Soros and the executives at these countries, or these companies and countries that hate us. That's where the problem is. How is it that these people you're not even electing your city council? I went to, years ago, I was practicing law when I first got out of law school in Galesburg, Illinois. I went to a meeting called for Leadership Galesburg, and they had a professor from Western Illinois trying to tell me that all cultures were equal. Okay, all religions were equal, all cultures were equal, and da 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 da. And so here's what I did. I asked him a question. I said, was the Nazi Germany culture equal to our culture? That's what I asked him. And then he was silent. And so I said, well, let's look at the Aztecs, who are sacrificing up to 200,000 people a year. Were they superior to our culture? And I just kept going until they basically threw me out of Leadership Galesburg, because I said that's the most absurd statement that any human being has ever made, and shows nothing but ignorance and stupidity. To say that all cultures are equal, all ideas are equal, that is just complete insanity and stupidity. And that's what we have being pushed in our schools. And this is one that people really don't like. But the Freemasons and the Unitarians out there that think that they can get away with pushing the exact same thing, which it's always nice to say, I love everybody, and to say that everybody has equal values. Every idea is not equal. And the only way that we can test ideas, we can test religious ideas, scientific ideas, every idea, is to have a First Amendment where we're allowed to debate it and talk about it in the public.
And redress our grievances.
And have we ever had a time in history where in America that someone has tried to put down our ability to freely speak on the internet? I mean, there's been there has never been this kind of a push to prevent American people expressing how they felt about the lockdowns and about everything. So you tell me what is truth and what is not truth, and is everything equal in the truth? It is not. And when that is when you know that there's a problem, is when they're trying to make one truth. This is the only truth there is, and that you got to live with that. Every civilization, every human being is subject to judgment of God, period.
And
And
I think just to piggyback on that, Richard, too, I think I would just say that I think you're right, and I think the responsibility for what took place really it starts from the bottom and goes to the top. I think everybody that played a part in this that didn't stand up and say no, we're not going to do this, including the city, and not to say too. Let's just be clear here. It's not to say that. There wasn't a couple of supporters at the city level, maybe one supporter at the city level. There was, and that was very much appreciated. But again, what can one person do? So there was wrongdoing all the way from the local level, in the city of Albert Lea, all the way up to the top.
but these people are being coached and groomed. And I'll just tell you
but
what.
let me interject. Let me interject here. I don't dispute that they're being coached and groomed. I don't dispute that at all. I know people who have known the chief of police there for a while, and they've said for years that he's a pushover, and very much on the left. So I don't argue the grooming aspect or the coaching aspect, but if we're going to have an impact on any of this stuff that's going on, it has to take place at the local level, like what Lisa was doing. And sometimes it's going to be incredibly painful. It's just going to be really, really painful, sadly. And yet, Lisa, you had said something that a lot of people, and I'm paraphrasing you, but a lot of people are like, well, you're just one person. What can you do? This last week, Friday, even through the losses that Lisa has experienced and suffered, Lisa showed us that taking that stand, even in the face of severe loss, severe suffering, and imprisonment. I mean, like, she was imprisoned. You can still win a victory that's not prurient. It's a tangible victory.
Yeah.
And this has opened the door for people like you now, Richard, to step in and say, now we take the system down. But it's got to start. You can't go at the state level, the state level, or the federal state level. You've got to do it at these local areas, and you have to make them feel the pain. They have to feel the pain.
Well,
Take away their incentive.
TC, and I want to just, if we can take a break, I just want to stop and say and give glory to God for this. Like you said, I'm one person, and what could I do? And throughout my whole journey, the Lord has provided people. Richard has come alongside us in these cases against me, in this case against me, and at the right time. And it was the timing, the strategy. There was prayer put into this as we were going forward. And Richard is amazing. And it wasn't just the two of us working together. There was a couple of other people involved, and certainly the Lord. All along, this is the stance that we have to take. And when I first started, I told you earlier, TC, when I first started this journey, if you will, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, even though I thought, well, yeah, I've done a little looking into this and I kind of know the risk, but I didn't know. But there's so many awesome and incredible things that have come out of this, not just meeting people like Richard and you and all the amazing people. I mean, I can't tell you how much good has come out of a bad situation, because when we are willing to stand, I like this. I think one of my kids might have shared this, maybe on Facebook or something. And I think it might've been my oldest son. Thomas Jefferson said, "I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery." Amen. And one of my favorite parts of the Declaration of Independence, a beautiful document and just to be clear, I'm not an expert on the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. To be clear on that, because I've been blamed, I've been accused of saying that I'm an expert. I am not an expert. One of my favorite parts of the Declaration of Independence is, "But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, It is their right. It is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. This is to me, this says it all right here. We did what we did. I did what I did, not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do for my kids and my grandkids, for all of our kids and grandkids, for future generations. And furthermore, what kind of a sacrifice have so many people made for our freedoms and our liberties that we absolutely take for granted? You know, this didn't just happen on our watch. This was our parents and our grandparents, possibly our great grandparents. You know, this has been going on for 100 years or more.
This has been going on since Abraham Lincoln destroyed the republic.
Yeah. Oh, what did you just say? So this is our duty. This is our duty. It's not just our right. It is our right. Well, not is it our right. Not only is it our right, but it is our duty.
It's our duty. It's our duty.
I take that seriously.
I was just summoned for jury duty. I'm like, I don't know if do they know who they summons? I don't know if they get it. But anyway, I was summoned, and it was on my letter. It's like, you have been summoned for a minutia jury, or I don't know what the heck I can't remember exactly how it read. And your dates are such and such. And obviously, you're not, they don't mention the case, but it says, being a juror is a constitutional right that you have as a citizen of this republic, and it's also against the law to not. I'm like, let that sink in, folks. It's your constitutional right to be on a jury and to have a jury of your peers, and if you don't want to take part in that, we'll throw you in jail. So yeah, when we bring up duty, it is our duty in these situations to do what Richard has done. Richard's doing it from a different perspective than Lisa and Vern, or Larvita or Lisa. We have a duty to speak out. We have a duty to stand up on these things. We have a duty to call out the malfeasance and the corruption. And I like, Richard, what you were saying about the fact that they are being coached. They are being groomed. Absolutely 100%. But we take them out at the root. And if we wait until they get positions of power, until they get into these places where they're senators, or they're in the House of Representatives, or they're governors, or they're attorney generals, or whatever the case might be, a lot of times they're so entrenched, it's hard to remove them. This is where we make this impact. And we have to make it painful for them. And I don't mean in a physical sense. I don't want anybody at home. Let me say this. I wouldn't care too much if some of these people were losing sleep, wondering, how much am I going to lose out of this? Because Lisa lost a lot of sleep. Damn it, this poor lady. And Vern, poor Vern. I can't even imagine how many trips to the refrigerator Vern was making for wine. I don't know.
I gotta tell you, and Richard, I don't think I've shared this with you yet either, but so on the 4th, it was November 4th, that Richard sent me the dismissal order. And there were a lot of tears of joy that day. I'm going to tell you the weight that was lifted. And that night, we went to bed. We woke up the next morning. It had been a really busy day. It was Friday, I think was the 4th.
It was, yeah, it was. Because I made a video as soon as I got the phone call.
Yeah. Okay. So I had gone over to a peaceful protest in Austin, because Walz and Ellison and Simon and a couple of others were coming through on the last leg of their campaign tour.
The entire Politburo.
What's that?
The entire Politburo.
Yeah. So we were there to a group of us went over to peacefully protest them. And so it was quite a day. A lot of things happened that day. But that night we went to bed and woke up the next morning. And I'll tell you what, I slept so good. I don't know how long it has been since I've slept that good, number one. And number two, I woke up for the first morning in probably 2 years or more, and my mind was just at peace. Normally every morning I wake up, usually several times, and my mind is just racing. And after this happened, after this dismissal came, just the load off of our backs. So thank God, and thank Richard. He did a tremendous job.
I was just going to ask that, Lisa. How much can you, in all, I want you to be forthright. How much are you crediting Richard's help in this situation for what took place.
Oh, completely. I mean, I see how the Lord had put him in place, and he was willing, and the Lord gave him the ideas and the strategy, et cetera, et cetera. It's like I said, the Lord provided everything. God doesn't, some people say God doesn't equip you before, but when he calls you to do something, you're not necessarily equipped prior, but he will give you everything you need, for he supplies all of our needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. If we trust in the Lord with all of our heart and lean not on our own understanding, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. So see how he used Richard to direct our path. There were a couple of other very viable people in this whole situation as well. And Richard has our gratitude, obviously, for obvious reasons. So
Richard, how much of this fell into how much of the work that Lisa and Vern and others did kind of made your work easier, and how much of it made it harder? You can be honest. Lisa said,
Before I can even say that, because you made the comment about Lincoln, I have to address that. And
no.
I
David, I'll have you on. We'll have a separate conversation.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, I don't support that conversation, and I believe that the behind the Southern revolt was the English were supporting the South. They were trying to create a problem, and they planned to invade from Canada. And what happened is the English people would never support the war because the English people were so against slavery. But England intended to do this to upset our country. It was not. I'm not sure that Lincoln maybe made some tactical decisions that were
I
improper,
appreciate
but
that.
I'm not going to go down the road and support. I don't want anybody to later on say that is absolutely not. I would support President Lincoln.
I speak for myself. I don't speak for anyone else.
Okay, well then I got to make that clear that I'm not going to talk against Abraham Lincoln.
And I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how I would respond. So I'm just going to stay neutral on this one, if that's okay.
I'm just not going to, I can't let that go by, because then I get called a racist because I didn't say something in that regard, and I am not a racist in any way, shape, or form. So I don't, I can't.
No, I appreciate your pushback.
Now, what was your question?
I completely forgot. How much of what was done prior to you coming on paved the way for you to be able to have success, and how much of what was done prior to you coming on threw some roadblocks up?
I would say it didn't throw any roadblocks up. Here's what I would say, is the arguments that Lisa and the constitutional lawyers were making, I would view them as very parallel to the arguments that I'm making, except the constitutional lawyers that we're talking to Lisa basically don't accept our current system as entirely legitimate. Just to be frank, I have, when I go to court, I have to assume that the civil procedure is actually 100% legitimate. I do think we should go back to a system where the jury has a right to judge the law. I mean, I think that was where we started, and that was how, in some ways we had. I think we do need jury nullification on occasions. In any event, putting that aside, the real difference between me and what they did was, I'm assuming that their law is okay, but if you read my arguments, they're very similar. They're jurisdictional arguments. But the fact of the matter is, the Emergency Management Act was written in such a way as to not give the governor tyrannical power.
That's right.
The governor took the tyrannical power, and because Democrats were in control of everything, and they have held power for a number of elections, and let's just admit this: that election a few cycles ago, where Tom Emmer was running against Mark Dayton, they stole that with ballots supposedly in the trunk of a vehicle. Everybody knows that they did that, and they unfairly ran all those commercials because he had one DUI. And we all know that our current governor, Walz, had a terrible, stinking, nasty DUI. Have the Republicans ever attacked him for that? No, not ever. So they steal that election, and now for 3 election cycles, they've had all Democrat governors. They put all Democrat judges with nobody that has any liberty leaning whatsoever. And so it's put us in this position. That's why any of you people that are Democrats that are thinking voting a Republican in this election should, because at the very least, by voting Republican in this election, you balance this ticket out. We've got to take, if Minnesota does not balance out the number of people that think on both sides of the aisle, if we don't balance this out, even Democrats are going to be living in a state that they are going to be extremely uncomfortable with, and they may want to leave. So, I mean, that would be my final word for those people. As far as my word on taking back the government, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do exactly what I'm doing. I don't live at a high level of money. Other attorneys that have less knowledge than me make a lot more money than I do. If you're going to run for city council against these other people that are funded by Soros, they're going to have hundreds and thousands of dollars. And you are going to have to take it onto yourself to run with a $500 campaign or something. I mean, that's the kind of sacrifice you're talking about. You're going to be personally attacked. Your wife may divorce you. Your kids may renounce you. Even within Lisa's family, I know she's had some of these struggles. So I'm talking to people out there. If you really mean it, they're going to try to imprison you. They're going to try to take your assets. They're going to try to do everything unless you're prepared to do it. So you've got to make the decision. You only get one life. And, I mean, I think you need to decide whether you have enough faith to take the stand. If God has given you enough faith to take the stand.
How involved are you going to stay going forward, Richard?
If Minnesota, if this election goes well tomorrow, and we can balance the ticket, because Minnesota is probably never going to be where I want it to be, but it doesn't have to be. It just, if there's, if we win a few of these offices, or if it's just another sweep by the Democrats, I'll be honest with you, another 4 years of Walz, and if we can't keep the legislature, it's going to be too intolerable to live here. And I can't promise that I'll stay here. I was living in California up until the point it became intolerable to live there. I love living in California. I love the weather. There's a lot of beautiful places I love to go, like Big Bear and Yosemite and Northern California, and in all the areas along the coast. It's just a really unique place, and I really enjoyed it. But I mean, it just drove me out of there with whatever.
The biggest problem with leftists, and I don't use the term liberal, I hate that term and the way it's used by most people today, because I am a classical liberal and paleo-conservative, paleo-libertarian, classical liberal, whatever you want to call it. The worst thing with leftists is they vote in all these really bad, destructive policies, and then they leave because they don't want to live under those bad, destructive policies, and they force other people to either stay or flee, much as yourself, fleeing California policy. And the leftists flee and go to places like Colorado and Montana and Texas, and then they start voting for the same policies. And it's just like the COOF virus. They take it with them everywhere they go, and then they wonder why everything's falling apart around them. Richard, do you have any words of encouragement for anybody else who is maybe seeing a lot of the same things we've been talking about tonight, about standing strong, and if somebody's in a situation where maybe they need help, is there a way they can reach out to you, or do you do things like that?
Yes. I mean, I can't respond to everybody, and I can't do everything for free.
Oh.
Although I have done a lot of pro bono work. But I am available to represent people if it's the right kind of case. And I mean, it's just like I've had a lot of clients come to me and say, is there any remedies that we can we can go after civilly. And basically, I've told them if Minnesota doesn't have a changeover in government tomorrow, in other words, if we don't have a governor and an attorney general or something that allows us to balance the balance sheet, I would say that your remedies are going to be very limited. I mean, I hate to say this, but when Ronald Reagan was president, it had an effect on the kids that grew up in the 80s. They were more conservative. You get Bill Clinton as president. I don't know why this is, but the kids that came of age in that time, they were more like a Bill Clinton like a type of individual. Not everybody. I'm just saying that that's the tendency. It seems to, and if you want to know when I think the bottom dropped out was when Obama became president, and not because of his color, but because of, I believe he's married to a transgender man. I believe that everybody has seen the thing that, or should have seen it, where the comment by the news person that says everybody knows Michelle is a tranny. I'm an attorney from Illinois originally, and Michelle Obama was named Michael Robinson, and she was a disbarred Illinois attorney. And I know that
we have now both officially said things that are going to probably cause radical problems for both of us. So, I was not expecting that one, Richard. I was like, I like you. You're fun. I think I'm going to have to get you on here, just one-on-one, me and you. That'd be a very interesting conversation.
I mean, people, they've got photos.
Lisa's over here chomping at the bit. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, everybody knows it.
She just wants to be the fly on the wall.
Yeah, I know how she.
And that's why do you think that we're having the promotion of transgenderism in schools? It's because the top priority of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama was exactly that go from the insanity of where our schools were before he came into office and where it is today, where we've got drag queens in grade school. That is absolutely insane. I don't think anybody I could not have predicted that. As bad as whatever, I could never have predicted that. And it came. I mean, I can't believe that it did. And I can't believe.
So many of us are saying that, Richard. So many of us are saying, where did this come from?
It absolutely, came from the very top.
And just overnight. It seemed like it was overnight to us.
It did seem like it was overnight. I agree.
So some of us were warning people. Lisa, you and I've had this conversation. I was warning people for years. Former fellow deputies walked up to me 3-4 months in, and like, one of them, I owe you an apology. And I'm like, what? You've been warning us about this for years. And I was running around telling people you should be, tested for fitness for duty for some of the things you were saying, but you were right. And I'm like, so Richard, I appreciate your time tonight. I was hoping that you'd be able to join us, and you brought a lot of light into the conversation that from a perspective that Lisa and I haven't been able to talk about before, just because, and I don't mean as an insider, but just being a BARD certified attorney in the state, and being able to go into the courtrooms and make these arguments in a way that other people can't, because they look at disdain on anybody who tries to. Mm-hmm. Lisa? What did we talk about? The person who has themselves for a client, or the attorney that has himself for a client has a fool for a client, or something like that.
I want to tell you the cost that this has cost me. My personal feelings against Barack Obama were such that, as to his Marxist views, that I lost my 2 best friends from college.
I know that feeling. Friends
for an entire lifetime. They will not speak to me. I'm not really that interested in talking to them ever again.
Yeah, I know exactly how that feels. And Lisa, you've had some of those same loss. Richard, if people want to find you, how can they find you?
I guess do I want to give out my number?
If you have a
You know
a
what?
website, if you have
Tell them I'll give you an email. rdahl71. So it's RDAHL 71 at outlook.com.
RDAHL
71 at
71.
outlook.com. And I mean, it's Dahl like there's a Dahl Ford in the cities. Dave Dahl was, I believe, anchor for which station downtown. So it's the same thing. There's a Richard Dahl with a Richard E. Dahl, worked for one of the really liberal law firms downtown. So there's a number of Dahls up here.
Yeah.
Because
If anybody wants to reach out to Richard, if you think you got a case, and like he says, he can't do pro bono on everything, but reach out to him if you think you got a case, especially when it's involving these constitutional issues, and or just send him an email and tell him thank you. That just tell him thank you for what he's done, because
please do, because TC, I don't look at this as a win just for Lisa Hanson, and
not at all.
This is a win.
It's vindication
for right. This is a win for the people of Minnesota. This is a win for rights and liberties. I sure hope it's not the last win, but it is the beginning. And
well, there's a blood moon tonight. You guys know that.
Yeah.
You should go. It's tonight before the election. Like at what, 5 a.m. We'll see it in the Midwest.
Okay.
You might. I don't go to bed until like 12:16. So, and I get up at 6:16 and spend exactly 30 minutes getting ready to go to work. So no, I will not see. Well, I might see it on my way in. So, Richard, I'm serious too. I might be reaching out to you. You might you might get a regular spot if you play your cards right.
Yeah, it pays really good, right? That's what.
Oh yeah, I've like Lisa's now on her 4th raise. She started showing up on the show, so the pay is amazing. Ask my co-host for Navigating the Northwoods, Christine. I doubled her pay last week on our show. So
yeah, started at a penny, doubled to 2, doubled to 4, doubled that. So Lisa
I'm not doing
bucks.
that math problem because I'm already broke. I don't want to make it worse. So Richard, I'm gonna let you go, and I'm gonna close up with Lisa and Vernon. I promise we won't say anything that gets anybody in any trouble.
All right. Good night. You guys have a good night. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Richard, and seriously, I'd love to talk to you again.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Lisa, thanks for coordinating that to bring him on. I wanted to say with a surprise special guest, but like, you know how I feel whenever I have you on, you are the special guest. So, and then you brought Vern, which was even more of a treat. So, yeah. Does he still have his Tito there?
No, it's water. It's water.
It's water.
It truly is water.
Or gin. One of those.
No. I'm not a gin drinker. No.
Oh, scotch?
I do like scotch.
All right, there we go. I don't know how anybody can drink gin straight. It's good in a Long Island, but really, Lisa, you can drink gin straight?
She can.
Well, yeah, with a squeeze of a lime.
A good gin with a little lime, yes.
You guys have not lived until you sat down to do a video conversation with Lisa, and she whips out the cigar. And that's, folks, that has happened.
Tonight.
Too chilly tonight.
Too chilly for a cigar tonight?
Too chilly.
Yeah, well, we don't.
We gotta have windows open.
We don't have enough windows to open.
Oh, Lisa, I asked you our very first conversation, recorded conversation. I asked you, are you prepared to go all the way with this? Are you prepared to go to jail? I know you remember that. I asked you, are you prepared? Mm-hmm. And you said,
I don't remember what I said, though.
I think you said yes. You didn't give a caveat, but
because in her mind at that time, it's like nobody's going to jail over this.
Yeah, I can understand, but I still, being who I am, I was looking at trends, and I asked that question because I saw that they were going to start making examples out of people. Uh, and for some reason, having talked to Larvita, having talked to Lisa Monet, and then with you, Lisa, there was something in particular, like all three of those cases I just mentioned were very targeted, incredibly targeted. But I saw something happening with you that was on I said this from day one about the personal nature of the persecutorial prosecution of you.
Right.
And look who showed up.
Oh, love you too, Lisa.
Your motorcycle riding partner.
Yeah, she's great.
There was something very personal about it, and I know you remember because I kept asking, "What is this? What's going on?" And I started asking people around Albert Lea. I'd run into people. I'm like, "What's this?" And more people that I talked to from the Albert Lea area, business owners especially. Oh yeah, Martinez has stood in the way of growth. She has caused problems for contractually here, and these are opinions, but they're informed opinions by people who dealt with the city because they were business owners, they are entrepreneurs, and the more I listened, the more I realized that it wasn't just you. It was a overall philosophical bent on her part. And Richard said, like, the woman's a Marxist. And I don't know if I said that very early on that I could just the aroma of it wafted off of her in her treatment of you. And she had designs to destroy you.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
Jail was icing on the cake. She wanted to destroy you. Yet here you are. You're still in the area, and she's gone.
Amen.
I'm going to make a few more phone calls. I've got a few more people working on it. We're going to just kind of pin down exactly to make sure. But it sounds like she's in a public defender's position in my former county.
Isn't it like a demotion?
Well, I feel bad for her clients.
Yeah, I do too.
Like it's funny, but I'm not.
I know you're not joking. I know
I'm not joking.
I know.
Do you feel vindicated at all? I mean, you lost freedom. You lost a business that you guys loved, and you had customers and clientele, people from around the world. That's one of the most touching stories, people coming from around the world looking for coffee in Albert Lea, Minnesota, and they stop at the interchange and like, we love this place. This reminds us of home. And like, so you've lost.
I think it was more the clients loved the business. We loved serving the clients.
Yes.
Love seeing them
love
have a good
seeing
time.
people from all over the country, all over the state. It was a passion to serve. It was did we love the business? We never made a dime. We never made a dime.
Wait, now, Vern, come on. You were in the courtroom. Judge Joey Buetel announced that Lisa was making money on the backs of everyone else and laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, that's pretty much what he said.
He did.
So he said it in court, so it must be true.
It must be. Yep. All right. Can't argue with that one. The judge is always right? So, but no, it was a labor of love. Our goal was to build it up to a point and have it a solid business that maybe we could sell, and then maybe we could make a profit on it. I'm not going to say there were never profits, but every dollar we ever made,
Right.
we stuck back into
Right
the
back into it. Yep.
Right.
buying more wine glasses, buying a new bar, buying more tables, buying more equipment for the kitchen. Everything was to improve the business to make it a better experience. And I don't know where that would have ended. So I don't know if we ever would have made a dime. We loved what we were doing, and we weren't concerned about we how do I put it? We didn't need it for an income. We had our other business that is a successful business.
Right.
So we made our living there. This was a labor of love for the community.
But we also had to pay our bills. We had to pay our
Yeah.
employees. We had to pay our bills, et cetera, et
And-
cetera. So the company had to produce enough.
We,
And
we're
your
not
rent and your
people
rent to the
for help.
city
What's that?
and your rent to the city,
Yes.
Yes.
which you were always, I mean, out in there again, if anybody's interested, I'll put the link in the description of this video
Yeah.
where Lisa sat down with
Bernie.
Bernie, and we had a very long conversation detailing
Yeah.
all of the preemptive malfeasance that really I walked away from that conversation saying the COOF mandates by Commissar Walz really made it possible for Martinez to execute an agenda that had absolutely nothing to do ultimately with the COOF and everything to do with taking out a small business that was standing in the way of whatever the city wanted to do with that building.
Yeah.
Because that's what she does.
Yeah.
Yep.
So no, for us, as long as the business could cover its own expenses, because we are not rich people, and actually through this whole thing, it has wiped out our savings because we've had a huge amount of generous people that have donated money to help us through the legal expenses, but now over the last several months, it's come out of our own pockets and it's wiped out our savings. So
How quickly we forget.
oh yeah. So that business, as long as it paid its own way, we were happy to keep it going. But
I want to point out to people, and this is not I'm not even looking for nods of agreement or head shakes of disapproval. I'm just, these are my observations. This is my opinion. Much of what Lisa, you, Vern, what you have done, what your family has done, you guys were definitely supported by the conservative, liberty-minded, constitutionally minded, patriotic movement here in the state of Minnesota and across the country.
Yes.
And you've made some friends, Unsafe Space, Carter and others. You know, your story got out there big time, you know, because of the interest that Carter took through Unsafe. But much of what you have done outside of the funding and the donations that have come through different places, you did all of this alone. And I know that you give credit to, you know, the Lord on this, but you did a lot of this alone. And I put a video out last week and I took some heat because I said, you know, in particular in one situation, there were never any promises to commute your sentences or pardon you or Lisa Monet or Larvita or any of the other people who have suffered massive loss and are still looking at, you know, fines and penalties and fees, that just because this case has gone away in Albert Lea doesn't take away the fact that the state still has these judgments in their eyes over you.
Right.
And no one has stepped up publicly and stated that, well, let's pardon her. Let's the politicians have been quick to talk about you on both sides. I've heard politicians on both sides quick to talk about you. But a lot of them just haven't been there standing with you the way a lot of other people have, because we're flash in the pan kind of people. And the thing that has broken my heart, and I said this earlier, is that I feel like Minnesota has forgotten. It has forgotten.
Yeah, everyone has moved on, and we understand that when you don't.
Yeah, I don't, Vern. I'm not as generous as you.
All right. Well, when you don't feel the heat directly, it's not like it's not burning your hand. It's easy to forget about it. For us, yeah, she lost her business. It's gone. It's totally gone. There's nothing to sell. So everything we ever invested is gone.
Right.
We have close to $75,000 in fines that the state has levied against her. We're not planning on paying them, but if they come after us, we're concerned about what little assets we have. If they're going to try to take, are they going to try to take our house, our cars? What we don't know where we're at. So, so yeah, we have concerns. I mean, this isn't over by any means.
Yeah.
Our goal is to fight back. We feel like we actually stand a chance to be on the offensive, but how many tens of thousands of dollars is that going to take to move this forward? So that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of at we don't really have the money to move forward, and we can't afford to lose what we have. So
You have to stay in the fight.
yeah, we have no choice.
And I think Vern is right that we do forget too easily, and I'm guilty of not having my eyes fully opened before all this happened to me. And not that I haven't.
You've said that so many times. Like the idea of the Constitution, just reading it or studying it.
But it's our duty, it's our responsibility to remind people too. It's true. So we're here tonight, and TC, you've been, without everything that you've done, it's all the pieces that have come together.
Absolutely.
That video where my son was filming at the city hall. My son did the video. You got a hold of the video. And look at where we have come from there till where we're at now. But we're here to remind people that
look where we've come.
It's not over, because what happened to us, me, and what happened to you, and what happened to Lisa and Larvita and Jane and et cetera, right? All the people, all the business people.
Yeah, this is no small
thing. What
thing.
happened to the churches, and what happened to the students? What happened to the health workers? Everybody. This affected everybody, and in some way or another, we're here to remind you about it. We're here to continue to talk to you about it, because maybe I took Lisa and Larvita. We lost more financially and property wise and so forth. Maybe some of the other people did. So what are we going to do with this? We've got to remember to talk about it, and we have to continue to make change. We've got to continue to reveal the truth, expose the corruption, and make the change. And so how do we do that? We get involved, and we hold people accountable. We do the things that we said. I would never do that. I mean, I ran for state senate. I had no desire to ever be in politics. But the reason I did it was because my opponent that I ran against, I looked at his voting record and I said, well, that's not a good voting record. That's not good for the people. And we don't need to get into that. But the reason I ran against him was because I wanted to offer I wanted to offer the people somebody that would stand for their constitutionally protected rights, somebody that would vote correctly for the people, for our freedoms and our liberties. So,
yeah, so it just goes to show that not enough of the people are awake yet. So not enough of them really wanted somebody to stand up for them. So it's
I made the
price. You paid a huge price in this too.
Yeah.
You stood up, you spoke up, and it's cost you.
Yeah.
And I won't go into detail on that. I mean, that's yours.
Yeah.
Well,
so, like you said,
it just makes me. I didn't do enough for you guys. I wish I could have done more. So.
I don't agree. Not at all. Not at all. Not even close. You did so much more than, again, the people that the Lord put in our lives through this whole journey. This should be a book and then a movie someday.
Yeah.
I might know somebody who writes.
It's amazing.
Lisa and I have bounced speeches off of each other. So
Yeah. It's been an amazing journey. We're not done yet. I was listening to the situation with True the Vote, Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips, 2000 Mules with Dinesh D'Souza.
They're out of jail.
These two, Catherine and Greg, were, in prison for 6 or 7 days, I think it was. Crazy story what's going on there. Political prisoners. Obviously, I know I'm not the only. Yeah, I've got a story, but you have a story. Catherine and Greg have a story, and the J6ers have a story. A lot of us have stories, and you know what? I think there's going to be more stories. But is our country, is our freedom, is our liberties worth? Yeah, the price that we're paying.
Yeah.
I've said yes, they are, and I will continue to stand, and I will continue to fight, and I will continue to be an activist, and we'll see what the Lord has next for me.
Well, Lisa, you don't understand political activism. You think that you can just be a political activist, Lisa, and that you can just come in here and do whatever you want and do your political activism however you want. And what you have to understand is that political activism, Lisa, was meant to be done through your legislator.
Huh.
I've heard that somewhere before.
I've heard those words before. Wait a second. I think it's in a transcript.
It might be in a transcript, which I still need to get my hands on, by the way.
Oh, I should send that to you.
Yeah, because I would really love to put that up.
Yeah, I think we have that one.
Oh, it's on the docket. On the docket.
Yeah, I would love to be able to put that up, because for those of you that don't know, I was paraphrasing Judge Joey Buetel, because he literally told Lisa, "You think you're some sort of self-stylized political activist, and you think that you can just do whatever you want and make changes, and that's not how political activism works. You're supposed to go through your legislator." And I'm like, I'm sitting there in the courtroom. I was sitting next to Vern, and I was literally thought Vern was going to have to tackle me because I was this close to getting a contempt charge, because I could not believe. Well, because I have contempt for him, not Vern Buetel.
Yes.
Well,
I almost lost my mind. Almost lost my mind.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole point of political activism, is you operate outside of the system, because the system is freaking failing.
That is how we make change, is the
Right.
activists talk to their legislators and say, hey, you guys, you did that was a great vote. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hey, that was a really bad vote. We don't want you to vote that way again. Getting ahead of the bills, we're looking at the bills, and that will, as we come into this next session, we'll be looking at the bills as much as possible ahead of time, and directing
and that's why
servants how to vote on those bills.
And that's why Christine and I have launched the new series, Navigating the Northwoods, here on the channel, is because we are going to be working with friendly legislators in the Senate and the House of Representatives, especially here in Minnesota at the state level, but also working with people at the county commission level and city council levels to look at proposed statutes and codes and ordinances.
Yeah.
And breaking them down and talking about them in ways that are accessible for average morons like me. So because that's the biggest reason why a lot of this stuff goes on and no one gets involved in political activism,
right.
is because the language is so it's so esoteric that you go to look at it and you literally end up agreeing with Nancy Pelosi and saying, I guess we're going to have to pass it to see what it says.
So this is news to me. So I'm so excited what you just shared. I was not aware. I apologize. I was not aware.
No,
and
you don't have to apologize.
After another time, not on camera, we need to have a conversation. I'm very excited about what you just stated. That has been our desire and goal. And that's because obviously it's what is needed. When the legislators have an idea for a bill, they hand it off to the basically the legal department there, at the House or the Senate.
Here, write this up for us, and
Yeah.
then we'll
Yeah,
vote.
legislative assistants do all of the work, and the senators and the House and the representatives, they just say we need this, and somebody writes it up, and they look at it, and 9 times out of 10 they don't even look at it. They're just trusting the people to write it for them.
And when it comes back, and the legalese is all there, then the legislator, unless they are an attorney, when they're looking at it, or I don't know, maybe they don't even look at it after it comes back. So there's a whole lot of accountability that needs to happen. And you're right, we need the people need to get involved. And I love that idea. We're on the same page with
I
that.
had no idea you guys were planning that.
Yeah, I had no idea you were planning that.
And we're supposed to be friends.
Oh, that's
The
true.
heck?
Well, at least we think alike, so we must.
I don't know if you want to say that in public ever again, Vern.
No, so this is good. This is good. We're moving forward, and this is what needs to happen, not just in Minnesota, but across our country. So,
But it's got to start locally,
it has to start locally.
which
Get
has been
Get involved with your city council. Get involved with the county commissioner. Get involved
school
with
boards.
the board. All of that. Get involved with it. Yes. Yes.
School
we have.
boards.
So,
And vote really good tomorrow. Vote really good.
I hope-
Yes, vote good. I don't know how to.
I'm just going to say, I hope people have done their homework. I hope
I-
people have done their research.
I will add my caveat to Vern's statement. Vote as good as you can
Okay.
in Minnesota tomorrow.
Okay, as good as you
There's
can.
yes, as good as you
And
can.
really, let's give credit where credit is due. We do have some really great choices. People like myself, I didn't make it to the general. That's all right. But we have a lot of other great folks in the state and local
Yes.
local level too.
Yep.
Races that are stepping up to the plate. They're saying we're sick and tired of the way things have been going, and we're gonna do something about it. So my hat is off to those folks.
Yeah, Walter Hudson.
Yes.
If you're in Walter Hudson's district, vote for Walter Hudson.
Walter Hudson.
If you are in Mark Bishofsky's district, you
Mark-
need to get out and vote for Mark
that I was
Bishofsky.
endorsed by those.
If you're in
two-
Eric
two
Mortensen's district, vote for Eric.
Get out there and vote for Eric. If you
Mortensen.
are
Wendy
Wendy Phillips,
Phillips.
Phillips, our good
Yep.
friend Wendy.
Ashley Klingbeil.
Yes,
And,
yes,
and
Ashley.
the other ones that are really important that a lot of people don't think about sometimes, your super local stuff, your townships,
Yep.
your county commissioners,
Yep.
your city council,
Yep.
your school board. Those are actually more important than
Yes.
the state level because government starts in your own backyard.
Yep.
And if you don't take care of your own backyard, state and federal, anything.
School board has the power to tax you like nobody else.
Absolutely.
Nobody else. And then they come to you and go, we're going to do a referendum this year and we're going to send your kids home with all of the propaganda to make you feel guilty for voting no.
Yep.
Yep. And so we've got all of locally here in Spring Valley, we got a young guy, running for city council. I call him young. He's not that much younger than me, but he's younger than me. That's all that matters. He's running for city council. I had him on a week and a half ago. I'm going to go out and vote for him tomorrow because he answered questions the way I would want them answered. Mr. Dugan said, sheriff, a good sheriff. You guys have that situation in Freeborn County right now.
Yeah.
You guys have a person running for sheriff who is part of the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the inside. And I showed the video while we were talking. I'm sorry. I'm not speaking for Lisa or Vern, but I'm speaking from my own personal perspective. Vote for Ryan Shea.
Yes, absolutely. I was just going to say, can I say that?
Yes, please vote for Ryan. Vote for Ryan Shea, because if you vote for Jeff Strom, you're getting Kelly Dawn Martinez and JD Carlson in the sheriff's office.
Yeah,
that's what you're getting.
He wants red flag laws.
Yes, he does.
Your neighbor can call and say, "Hey, I'm concerned about my neighbor, and I think he has guns," and they'll come and take all your guns away.
So sheriff is incredibly important. Vote for a good sheriff. And if you can't find somebody to run for sheriff that's a good sheriff, then you have a lot of other problems you need to be addressing. Vote for Nate. If you're in Nate Wiesenberg, Senate District 10, write in Nathan Miller up in District I can't even remember. I've had so many people on over this last year. Nate Miller over Jordan Rasmussen, Wiesenberg, I mentioned him. Klingbeil. How many others have I? I mean, just we have to we can win the governorship. We could win it. We could win the Attorney General's office. We could win the Secretary of State. We could had Ryan Wilson on State Auditor. We could win all of those. But it's not going to make a damn bit of difference if we're not controlling our cities, our counties, and our school boards. And we don't have good sheriffs who are willing to practice nullification and interposition. Lisa, Vern, you both know how much I respect and love you guys. And I can't imagine how you guys felt that first night. Some stranger comes up and just says, "Hey, I want you on my show." And you didn't even offer me a drink that night. It was,
Sorry about that.
You're like, "Could you just get out of my business?" No, they did not do that. But I tell people frequently that of the three ladies that I have of the people that I've interviewed, you three ladies, the two Lisas and Larvita, have proven to me that, one, we have a lot of strong people in this state, and two, we don't have enough strong people in this state.
Mhm.
And it's very easy to sit back and watch other people do the hard work. And that's what I have done with, in particular in our relationship, the three of us. I have sat back and watched you guys do the work. And I just kind of swoop in at a time where I feel like, hey, this would be a good time to have them on again. But I'm not going anywhere. And none of your other fans and friends and supporters are going anywhere. And I know for a fact that some of the big names that I know, and I'm not saying that like I'm important. It's not that I'm important. I just know some people. But some of the big names are really paying attention to what happened on Friday, and they're paying attention tonight. And they are going to be behind you, supporting whatever you have going forward. And if you guys need anything at all, you let me know and we'll get people on it.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
I mean, one thing, we still have to move forward. And I do not like to ask for money. We've always made our own way. But Lisa does have a Give, Send, Go account. She does have a GoFundMe account. And the next step is moving forward, and it requires funds. So
yeah.
Where can they find your Give, Send, Go?
Yeah, I should have sent that to you as links ahead of you, or ahead to you. Should have sent you the links, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, at our ages, it's 10:08, so I'm like,
and it's really like
11:08.
So,
but they can go to, I think if you go to Give, Send, Go or GoFundMe and do a search for Lisa Hanson, the interchange, something like that, then I think that's how it popped up the other day. I was just kind of checking things out. So, yeah. So if you want to go there and check that out, otherwise, they can also go to Stand for Liberty MN.com, Stand for Liberty MN, as in Minnesota.com, and the 4 is spelled out FOR. That is a website that we did build quite a while back, and it's still in existence. We're not necessarily doing a lot with it right now, but there are links on there to be able to, or a link to be able to give. People can reach out to me via Facebook at the Interchange page on Facebook. And certainly I monitor those. I have 3 or 4 Facebook pages, and I monitor those on a daily basis. So you can message me, Lisa Hanson for Senate Facebook is still live, and also the website Lisa Hanson for Senate.com. So there's a lot of ways people can get a hold of me. So
Yeah, you could find her. She is on Facebook. Trust me. I know that she's on Facebook, even though I'm not on Facebook.
If
I
you
don't.
just
Somehow Lisa survived. I got nuked. I don't know.
I don't know.
anytime I
I don't know.
Google Lisa Hanson, she's like the first 10 things that come up. Lisa Hanson, Albert Lea, Lisa Hanson, Minnesota, Lisa Hanson
Interchange,
jail,
yeah.
Lisa Hanson interchange. You're gonna find 10 listings of articles. So she's very popular.
Or something.
Well, you could be popular and not be well liked. You could just be.
Yeah.
That's right.
However, I hope that after this, Lisa, I think the thing that's on my mind, and then I want to get you guys out of here, and I'll do a close. The thing that's on my mind in all of this is, I'm praying that healing in your personal relationships, in particular, and close friendships that maybe have been damaged. I hope that this opens the eyes of some of those naysayers to take a step back and go, maybe we overreacted. And somehow this will humble them to places of contrition, because you've done everything in that situation that you can do. And I know how much it hurts you guys. And that has been on my mind from the time that you broke that. I mean, and you've talked about it publicly. I know how much that hurts you, and I can't even begin to imagine the pain that you're still in all this time later over the damage that has been done there. So, there's a lot to be, I don't like to contextualize and cherry pick stories, but from the scriptures, but the one that I think of is how we look at the story of the prodigal son, and we question why the father would respond the way he did when his son returned, and even kind of respond in a empathetic way to the son that was upset about the way the dad was responding to the son that returned.
Mhm.
And what people who've not been through it do not understand is that these severed familial and close friendships, when they're severed, the pain of that endures for a very long time, especially when you've done everything you can. And you have been, as best as I can ascertain, have been fortunate to have very supportive family while you've gone through this pain.
Mm.
And I think, to me, that would make the pain of the severing of some of the relationships even more acute, because of how supportive everyone else has been. And I'm praying that you guys will have a moment to slaughter the fattened calf and rejoice.
Man, thank you. Thank you. That
Yeah,
means a
thank you.
lot. Yeah. Yeah. Really
That
means
is, I mean that. I really want that for you guys. To
Yeah.
me, that would be the ultimate victory in this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So relationships are everything. That's really, I guess the goal is to, the healing and mending, and really not just for us, but for all people, because a lot of people have suffered through this. So, so thank you. We love you. We appreciate everything you were doing, TC, and always have. You're my brother in Christ, and I didn't have any brothers on this earth. So you and a few other guys, I think of you guys as my brothers, my bros.
I'm not her brother.
Yeah, that would be weird.
That
That would just be, no.
No, we won't go there.
We are in the wrong part of the country for that. Well,
you.
I really appreciate your guys' time and your friendship and the support that you have been to me and the time that you've always made. Both of you, Vern, you go out of your way whenever you know I'm in the area to find, when I say the area, normally it's a rally or an event that people are speaking at. So, but you've always gone out of your way to find me. So, keep me posted on all of this, and for everybody else, Lisa Monet's trial is in January, and so tomorrow is a big day for her with the Attorney General race. So no matter what happens going forward, we need to keep other people who are going through this in mind.
Right.
And
That's
this with you, Lisa, sets a precedent for a lot of them. So
right.
I really appreciate your time. You guys go get out of here and go do what old people like us do at this time of night, which is complain about the weather and go to bed.
Yep.
And and stay in touch and send me the links, and so I can to the especially to the crowdsourcing or crowdfunding stuff, so I can put it in the description of the video.
Yeah, we
Sounds
appreciate
great.
that.
Thank you so much. Love you, TC. God bless
Love you guys. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye. I'm gonna close this up because I'm feeling emotional, because Lisa and Vern do that to me every single time I see them. The fight's far from over, folks. It's far from over. This is a moment, a reprieve. We cannot stop now with fighting to keep this momentum going. We have got to continue to fight to keep this momentum going. Lisa Monet has a trial in January. We need to show up. We need to show up for that. Unless a miracle happens tomorrow and Ellison loses and Schultz steps in and says, no, there will be no trial. But we cannot stop. And so if things don't go the way we want tomorrow, we all need to show up at the trial for Lisa Monet in January. As many of us as can be. And if there is a red wave tomorrow, folks, that isn't your excuse to sit back on your haunches and say, oh, look, we've won. Because there's a lot of cleansing that needs to happen within the conservative movement, within the Minnesota GOP. There's a lot of changes that need to happen to keep the momentum going. And if things don't end in a red wave tomorrow, there are a lot of changes that need to happen so that we can start capitalizing on the momentum. I know that not everybody agrees with me all the time. I know that I say things, we saw it tonight with Richard. But we need to be able to have these conversations when we disagree, and we need to be able to do it in a way that's civil and constructive and productive. And we have to start aiming for better candidates. And we heard Richard say this tonight. We heard Vern say this tonight. We heard Lisa say it tonight. And if you guys have been watching me for the last 2.5 years, I have been saying this since before I started this channel. And I've been saying it since day one of this channel. It's all about the local. We train future leaders to go on to bigger positions at the state level and at the federal state level by training them to do what's right constitutionally and training them to do what's right ethically and morally at the local level. We make them and shape them into what we want them to be by holding them accountable down here where the rubber meets the road, where it really matters. And if we had been doing this, and Lisa said this, and I have said this before, A lot of where we are right now is directly a result of the boomer generation dropping the ball and the greatest generation dropping the ball. Yeah, they did some great things, but they dropped the ball too. They fell asleep at the switch. And they let this country run down the path that it's on right now. And we have the opportunity right now to fix that, but we have got to stop being afraid of upsetting people. No matter who it is. And we have got to stop forgetting. One last analogy. When the Minnesota High School Sports Association decided to shut down all the sporting events in the state of Minnesota in 2020, Let Them Play Minnesota quickly formed. And every parent, every Tom, Dick, and Harry under the sun went out there and protested for the rights of their kids to play football and volleyball and basketball so they could have that senior year experience that's so foundational and fundamental. And they won. And they changed the policy. And then they went home. And they forgot about the business owners. And they forgot about the non-essential workers because they won their victory. That pissed me off. Because I stood on the front lines with them at rallies and events and agreed with what they were saying. But they got their victory and they went away. If you're one of those people that's forgotten, you're part of the problem. And I have news for you. You're not just part of the problem today because you've forgotten. You're part of the problem because you let this happen under your watch 2.5 years ago and before. Get out there and vote tomorrow, Minnesota. Get out there and vote. Because if you don't, and you don't get the result that you want tomorrow, and you don't hold people accountable going ahead in the future, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. So my friends, as always, until next time, fight for your freedom. It is yours, and fight for your liberty. It belongs to you. And as always, until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.